Hello, everybody. Welcome to the DePIN podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. We're excited to bring you interviews with the key founders in the DePIN landscape, investors, and ecosystem partners. This is an exciting time for DePIN, and this year we're going to be meeting even more founders, learning about the projects that they're building, about the traction they're getting, and about the revenue that they're generating. The podcast is brought to you by Fluence. Fluence is building a decentralized compute platform. It's a project I'm a co-founder of and really excited about. So buckle up for this year. Please subscribe to the channel, listen to us on Spotify or Apple. And of course, if you are around any of the large conferences, come to our DePIN Day, where you can meet these founders on the Fluence team in person and hear from all the ecosystem partners as well. So look forward to seeing you in person, and let's get going on this podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the DePIN podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. I am thrilled to be here today with Markus Levin, co-founder of XYO. Welcome, Markus.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, Tom.
Listen, this is a treat because Markus is a co-founder of perhaps the original DePIN project, launched even before Filecoin, called XYO, which is started off as location service, is now data verification in a DePIN format. So he has kind of been through the booms and busts, and DePIN before was DePIN, and has the stories to prove it. So, Markus, let's kick it off and tell people what XYO is and what it does.
Yeah. XYO started out as a proof of location network. We realized that location gets easily spoofed or hacked, right? You can download the GPS spoofing app and pretend that you're in Amsterdam right now while you're actually in New York City. And that's a problem, for most apps on your phone, but also for automated supply chains, self-driving cars, but also for other DePINs, right? We're trying to make sure that the weather station, for example, is at the location it's supposed to be, and so on. And so we came up with this technology to provide certainty around location. And we did that with IoT devices versus devices to cryptographic handshakes, and we prove the proximity to each other. And then as you have more and more interactions, you have more certainty, and you can have relational maps and so on. And then on top of that, we started to layer other data like temperature sensors and other IoT data or offline data and many, many data points. And we realized we can validate and verify it through the proof of location, but also through something called proof of origin, where we prove a data point started out, let's say the temperature sensor, right? And then it gets saved into an IPFS database and then put it into a smart contract, and we tangle it the handoff along the way, and we can prove the data. And so today we are the original DePIN, perhaps, as a Oracle, a trusted Oracle connecting real data with blockchain, but we do data validation and verification, and often with a location component, and we do location verification also for games. We try to bring the games, for example, to the real world. We have the partnerships Upland. It's like a metaverse, all with DePINs and RWAs and stuff like that.
Great. Well, there's a lot to get into there. I got to think that location is important, but data verification is ever more important. But both of those are important, and they're important even in the DePIN ecosystem, as well as plenty of other ecosystems as well. So as we get to more and more bots and more kind of proof of humanity needs, that location is kind of a real big part of that, I got to guess. So love to get into that, but I first want to back up for a second. This is a question I haven't asked in a while, but given your length and tenure in the space, you were in this before the term DePIN existed. You now are a core, and even one of the first DePINs, which you were probably discovered at some point and didn't know that. And so how would you define DePIN? I have a particular definition. I'm just kind of curious, given your time in the space, how you would think about that.
Yeah, you're right. We didn't know that we were part of DePIN. Messari came up with that term in 22, I think, and then people were talking about it. We said, yeah, we are DePIN. We should be a part of it. And then there was, especially in Europe, there was lots of DePINs coming up, and we weren't so much part of the conversation because we were focusing on our data verification and so on. So we weren't part of the early DePIN scene, even as YP was our original DePIN. And so Today, we've found that DePINs are very special because they have in most cases they have like real business models, right? So they're different than a lot of other crypto projects, which live off their token reserve and hope that something good is going to happen to them, right? And then the project is going to go away. And I think crypto and blockchain, like as enthusiasts, we try to find the real use cases for a while, right? People were talking about that before DePIN became a thing, and DeFi was one of those, right? And then oracles and identity, some NFT use cases, but it was a little bit more limited. I think DePIN became a very important use case, right? Because you can show like revenue is coming in, right, from demand partners of what in DePIN gets created, and then right it gets put into the token, right, and there's an ecosystem, basically a circular ecosystem, and so for me DePIN is decentralized physical infrastructure network, of course, but it is a way to allow everyone to decentralize input into decentralized infrastructure expenses, but also input into data networks and other things. So it's not only infrastructure, I think, like as a hardware, but it's also can be a software based DePINs as well. Exactly.
I mean, I agreed, and that software-based DePIN gets it bears more kind of exploration. But I guess tell me what you think of this one, which is you hit some of it, but crowdsourced infrastructure, which is put bound together in a network, providing a useful service, secured and incented by crypto economics.
That's perfect. I think you could
because there's a lot of apps. Because I say that because there's a lot of apps out there that are just apps. And to your point, they may have a great business model, but just an app is not DePIN because you're not sourcing your infrastructure and your data from lots of people. And that is I think a real important differentiator. And by the way, plenty of those could be super successful, but a lot of people are jumping on this bandwagon. But I'm just curious to get your view on it.
I think apps are still part of DePIN, like in our case, we only did IoT devices and only made it comprehensible to crypto nerds like you and me. And it was difficult to onboard a lot of people because our addressable market was just too small. And people then in 2018, 2019, right, it was crypto and blockchain were difficult to understand. Like people thought your drug cartel if you spoke about crypto. And so we launched an app as well called Coin. And with Coin, today, about 80% of the people who come into our ecosystem are non-crypto users, and it's very easy to onboard, right? You get like grandmas, you get truck drivers and Uber drivers, and this group of nurses, and it's like all these people come into our ecosystem, and it accelerated our growth. They can still have IoT devices and so on, but the app allows it to make it for someone who is not in crypto to get into the ecosystem. And before you needed a wallet address, right, to get your XYO into your wallet. Today, we listed on Coinbase and some other exchanges. You can redeem your tokens also right into your Coinbase email address, so you don't even need to worry about wallets and understand all the things. And I think often, apps maybe don't have a high enough barrier to entry often, but they enable, I think, millions to come into DePIN and into crypto, and I think that's very exciting there.
I guess I'd say apps by themselves are enabling for sure, but let's get into your project, because I think that the app is just a piece of it, which is a different story. But let's talk about a little more detail in terms of what it is and how it works, because that is something that I think we all that I don't have a good understanding of yet. So how does the data verification take place? What are you sourcing from people?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we had these IoT devices doing cryptographic handshakes. We have 4 components in the network. Let me start there. We have the sentinels, which are devices which capture data. There's the bridges which relay data, the archivists that store data, and the diviners crunch data to give you the best answer to a given question. And did my e-commerce package make it to my doorstep, for example? And so the sentinels, they are IoT devices, for example, which do these cryptographic handshakes, or they can be your mobile phone and you collect data in the phone. It can also be that you go collect offline data. So it can be, say, collect all the ATMs in Manila, for example, right? And the community goes and collects the data. And then, it gets bridged into these archivists, and then the data gets crunched and validated and verified through our proof of origin and proof of location technologies. And then that data gets sold to Web2 and Web3 companies.
So I'm still trying to figure out where's the data generated? How do you generate that data? Is it from your phone, or where?
Yeah,
what's the device? You mentioned device earlier, so yeah. I'm trying to understand that.
It depends on the type of data. So it could be passively, it could be cryptographic handshakes and interactions, which are passively, for example, between a mobile phone and an IoT device. And then it could be
so then there's a universe of your providers who download an app. To the earlier point, download an app on their phone, and that is used to verify some data that passes in some vicinity of it.
That's correct. Yes.
Or some, okay. So there's a phone app.
Or they go and collect that data even. So if someone wants a picture of all the clouds in Amsterdam or something like that, right? Then the community can go and collect the data and take pictures of clouds in Amsterdam, for example.
So that's phone-based.
It's phone-based, and in this case, it's phone-based. It depends on the use case. It can also be IoT device-based, like a Bluetooth sensor, for example, or an NFC card, and stuff like that.
And how many different devices, I think, do you support data collection from, or do you run tasks for people to collect data in?
Yeah, theoretically it's unlimited. We supported, for example, at some point upgrades in a dialogue chip system. It's a certain kind of chip, and you were able to upgrade it as XYO firmware. And so if you put that chip into a device, right, it would be XYO supported. But today, mostly what we're doing is Bluetooth and NFC. But we can theoretically support others as well.
And so walk me through the process of a person, and I guess it's mainly individuals who discover and by the way, how many people are on the network right now? How many providers or individual users do you have?
Yeah, it was 8 million nodes in the network.
8 million. I mean, it's a big number.
Yeah.
That is huge. I have to actually adjust something. I mean, people are thrilled about Grass, which has grown from 0 to about 2.5 million people sharing bandwidth. And a lot of other ones are, 100,000 here, or whatever. Demo may have 10 or 20,000. And you've got, I think those numbers, I could be wrong. You have 8 million is a very big number. And so there's 8 million people have downloaded, and explain that to me. They've downloaded and used their phones as a device effectively.
They're either that, or they use the Bluetooth beacon, or the NFC cards, or or they are have a device out there basically.
But most of those 8 million are probably phones.
That's right. Yes, that was the absolute explosion for us. We tried to have IoT partnerships with SK Telecom, the South Korean telco, and we had a proof of concept going on with T-Mobile in the US, and tried all those IoT providers, to get started in the crypto revolution and expand our network right through their IoT networks. It was just slow conversations there. It was like 2-3 years. No money was flowing. It was a high cost on our side, and we realized it's just difficult to as a small project as ours, to convince them to do what we want to do, and so we've tried to find a way how we can grow our network, and that's how we launched the mobile app.
Fantastic. And so then give an example of the type of a customer you have, or the type of data that someone with their phone might be verifying or validating.
Yeah, we have like geolocation partners, for example. So like geolocation data providers, AI, trainings data. We have advertising and media people, real estate, intel people. Like we have across the
Wait,
gap.
but so how does it work? Is it a push or a pull? So customers say, I need this data verified, or how does that process work?
It could be either passive data collection, like those interactions with devices, which is just passively, or then I need to have data verified and they collect the pictures of clouds in Amsterdam, for example, and then you get a task inside the phone, and then you collect that data. Our users, they use their app more than 3 hours a day in the foreground. That's more than all social media apps get in combined usage. And so and why we have a 4.5 star rating in both the stores, obviously they love it and they love the return they get. And so it's all kinds of different ways of collecting data and earning. Today you earn points in the app, not XYO anymore. And those points you can exchange for XYO. It makes it easier for non-crypto people to understand.
Great, super interesting. And so, well, you mentioned coins. So how does that ecosystem work? So how do rewards work? How does revenue the network work? How did you kind of tie all these things together with 8 million users that they're looking for some type of reward, presumably?
Yeah. We have you earn points, and those points are tied to the dollar as you collect data, which is useful for someone else. And those points you can now exchange for XYO, ETH, or BTC, but also for airports and PlayStations in the US and UK, also sweepstakes entries and so on. And we did that to be able to entice people, to come get free airports, basically just collect some data kind of thing. And while we do that, still 95% of the people who use the app are redeeming for XYO. So they are like this. We take 80% of them are non-crypto users, but 95% redeem for XYO. So we turn a lot of people into being crypto users and crypto people.
And so what happens to the revenue? Because you mentioned a whole bunch of customers. So where does that revenue go?
Yeah. The revenue comes in to buy the XYO token. So at the beginning, also we were living in a utopia, and we said, we only take XYO as payment. And so after the first 5 companies said like, no, we're not touching crypto, especially in
exactly.
You're like, maybe that's a bad idea. And now we take any form of payment and we take that money and buy the token and run the project. And we have the XYO Foundation, and you have XY Labs, for-profit entity, and XY Labs also it's unique because it does audited financials, and it was the first crypto company in the US to qualify to something called a Regulation A offering, which means we were allowed to sell our shares to non-accredited investors. And so we do audited financials. So our revenue actually is transparent. And you can see that we didn't release 24 yet, but in 23 we did $10.5 million in revenue.
That's terrific. And all of that revenue goes to buy the token, but it doesn't burn. It just buys the token.
No, yeah, we burned 86% of our token supply. So we burned a lot over the years, and we do it in chunks, and there is not necessarily a formula. So we burn and we buy and burn and so on as the project flows. But we are working on some new burning for like this year, but we haven't quite announced it yet. So don't dig too deep.
No, fair enough. I won't. And I just mentioned it because I'm actually, by the time this comes out, I will publish, I think, this the DePIN token economics report. And, by burn is the most obvious way to, I think, align the project revenue with token holders. And one of the things I mentioned is that the higher the buy burn percentages, the more aligned you are with token holders. And so you've got a couple of Glow is at 100%, a couple are 80%, and the lower down in that you go, I think the less trusted you will probably be. You're in a unique case because you're also doing audits, right? No people aren't. Plenty of people aren't. And, some companies have been sued by the SEC for misstating partnerships. others claim these huge revenue numbers, but there's no buy burn transparency. And so the thesis is that if you have buy burn, you should be more transparent and trusted than any audit, right? Because you can see it, anyone can see it if it's done the right way. So I'm curious to see where you kind of come out on that, given your experience in the space.
Yeah, I think buy and burn is important. Like, as I said, we burn 86% of our supplies. We burn a lot of the tokens, but more than 86 actually. But we are there. There can be a little bit of over enthusiasm also in the crypto community, because in the end you need to run your project in a way. You know, if you use all your revenue to only burn your tokens, right, then it seems like what do you support your business? And you need to pay
your treasury.
Yeah, but your treasury, but then you rely only on the markets. So right now the markets are down, right? And
but if your buy burn is continuing at that rate, and you're generating 10 million and you're buying every single quarter, you should be separate from the market to a large extent, don't you think?
No. I'm in the market for 7 years with XYO. I know we are not separate. You know, we had a $1.1 billion market cap at some point, and at some point we had a like $20 million market cap, you know? And
right. No, I get it. I've been there too.
Exactly. And so it's like when you're at a $20 million market cap and then you have a 50-person team, you know, then you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, and there's macro events like new administration, it's a war, whatever kind of thing, you know, where you can't do anything, you know, people won't buy your token, even if it's the sexiest thing out there. And so my personal opinion is, to burn 100% is maybe not the best thing, because you need to have a sustainable business model. You know, like you don't need to run your profits, which we don't. But it's you need to be able to be like right on the cusp there while you run a super lean team. That's my opinion, and I think it served as well because we made it for 7 years, and while we are being super transparent and everything.
Listen, you guys have done it, and that is obviously you've lived through this, so I appreciate that. The one thing I would just push on a little bit is if you have 50 million market cap and you're generating, pick a number, 10, 12 million of revenue. If you're buying 10 or 12 million dollars worth of a token with a 50 million market cap, then that is it's find it unlikely it stays at 50 million, but maybe I'm wrong. And you should be providing that would seem to give a lot of lift to that token, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it does. Our market cap is 150 million, I think, right now. But it definitely does give lift. But then some of the you also have selling pressure and all the things. You know, like I just know over the 7 years, you know, we had like some scary moments and some good moments, and the reason we are not out of business is because we built a business model which also can work in the worst bear markets. We made it through them, and our community believes in it also. You know, our coin market cap rank, you know, was the highest was like 72 at some point, and the lowest was in like 500 like 6 months ago, I think, and it fluctuates back and forth, you know, as people get excited about tokens and other things. And I just think it served us well so far for our community.
Yeah, I get it. And listen, Fluence, we probably peaked at 1.5 billion, and you know we're at a fraction of that right now. So I've seen. We don't have we also haven't. We've been out tokens about for a year, right? So not even close to the amount you've been out there. So I totally get it, and I also seen this with Hedera, which I helped found before Fluence, right? Where that peaked at 56 cents and its low was like less than a penny, right? So there's a lot of, now it wasn't, buy burn unfortunately isn't relevant in either one of those cases, which is unfortunate. So I can't speak to that, but I hear the point. The thesis is though that the more certainty investors have on buy burn, the higher they will value the token because the easier it is to predict the impact of revenue on the token. And so That doesn't mean it has to be 100%. I'll take your point there for sure. But the more certainty there should be a premium to certainty because it's more predictable rather than something arbitrary, which can be decided by anybody at any point.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we rejiggering ours a little bit this year. But as I said, we burned 86%, so we burned a lot. But also we have. But for my personal opinion is if Ethereum burns 100%, then I think there is a more risk premium because they are not able to support if their token doesn't do well. And I saw the tokens from 2018 and 2017, like 90% of those are gone. They only lived off the treasury, and DePIN will help, I think, to make something like Glow more sustainable. But I'd be worried as an investor if someone burns 100%.
Fair enough. That's definitely good perspective for sure. Tell us about the reward piece. And so what's interesting, it sounds like people are, if I just download it, am I paid? Do I get points, or am I only if I get points if I'm work on a particular quest that's related to a customer demand?
Yeah, no, you can earn points by passively just having the app going, and it does some stuff passively for you. And it's the basic function in the app is called geomining, and it's basically doing location and data verifications, and so you earn points, and those points you can exchange for XYO. But you won't earn a lot just by only doing that. But there are people, who are, this is crazy stories. We wrote some case studies about them, like someone paid off their mortgage and went on a 30-year delayed honeymoon. I'm a truck driver in Australia. He invited me for lunch. He wanted me to tell me that he was early retired and then put 400K into a friend's business, just all because of XYO. And he was part of the coin. And it's these cool stories, in crypto and DePIN, that if you're part of it and you have an asset which can appreciate in value, even if you don't have a lot of assets before, you're able to hopefully make something out of them. And that's what I love out of that.
Yeah, no, that is terrific to be able to, that's the real differentiation of a DePIN project versus like an Uber or an Airbnb or an Amazon, where the early users, share in the growth and the scale of the network as it grows, assuming they hold on to the token, which of course we all hope they do. So that is, I love hearing about those stories. I hope we hear hundreds, thousands more of those. What are the competitors, the centralized competitors? Like who are you competing with, and how do you kind of benchmark your offering versus the traditional companies?
Yeah, on the centralized side, there's nobody who does all we do. There's of course companies like Google, which have great location offering and data verification and others. But we work with a geolocation company, for example, and looked at what their point of interest data is and compared it with ours. We did some proof of concept with them, and we found that in their cases, in 60% of the cases, there was some flaw in their data sets. Some tiny things, like the opening hours of the restaurant was wrong, or something was wrong. And in our case, it was more than 99% correct. So you have geolocation companies, specifically, and other data collection type companies, but nobody is as comprehensive as us. So we haven't seen them yet. We hope to be a big trainer of AI, for example, AI data. There's some companies which do that, but not in a less as online way as we are.
But so I still don't understand, the competitors are who?
Like Google, for example, could be a competitor. Like Google provides location data, right? And they have devices here. Google and Apple. Then we work with Here Technologies. It's a navigation data company. Yeah, those come one.
Well, and if you're competing with Google and Apple, then you said you're probably more updated, so you think your data is more accurate. And what about price? Are you cheaper than those services as well?
Maybe. We don't know our offering is just different, because it's like on-demand offering. For their on-demand data, for example, Google doesn't price it because they use it for themselves. So it's difficult to determine, right? When you say, I want to collect all the ATMs in Manila, for example, then Google sometimes asks you questions, like, where is the door of the restaurant, or did you like to visit to the restaurant and stuff like that? And then they monetize it through other advertising and so on. But they're not selling that data to anyone else. In our case, we sell that data to other people. So we are cheaper because they're not offering it to anyone else, I think.
But that means it's something else. It means that you're offering a service which no one else offers, or no centralized companies offer.
Not that we are aware of. There's smaller competitors. We know some apps which collect data, right? Like, for example, for AI training. But there's nobody who provides like greenfield data collection as we are aware of.
Gotcha. And so the data that people are using, I sort of understand some AI related elements, but a customer would want to know how many ATMs are in Manila, as an example, or what is a customer demand? Like, what's a customer request that you can recall? It's kind of interesting to make it really tangible for people.
Yeah, for example, someone wanted to have all the restaurants in New York City, in certain zip codes in New York City, and then I wanted opening hours, a picture, category of the restaurant, and this type of thing.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of data. And so you guys source that data.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep, we did.
Wow. And how much is that data? How much would that request cost?
I can't tell you that publicly. We have because NDA kind of stuff, but yeah.
I'm just trying to understand, is that 10,000, 100? I mean, I don't even understand the magnitude of what that is, because that's a lot of data to collect.
Yeah.
But that's fascinating, because that is a difficult problem that you can go out there and crowdsource immediately. That's very cool to be able to do that. I just have no sense as to how to price that, because you think about it, then let me ask the question differently. How many phones or people participated in completing that data set, do you think?
Hundreds.
At least, if not more.
Yeah, hundreds. They are like, and I think there's some super users, who are crazy and earn a lot.
Who just run around and do it. But so you're like, hey, app, boom, you get an update. We need to source this information. If you're in these zip codes, any restaurant, we need to find like, it gives instructions and people just go do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And they earn points for that, which they get for BTC, ETH, or XYO.
Yeah.
And keep going from there.
That's right. But
all right, that's interesting. No, that is interesting. So and what's interesting also is how what I think is cool about this is that you have to both reward everybody who participates, so they need the incentive, but then you also need incentive beyond that, which is why you want to burn the token. So anyone who holds a token is also rewarded for the revenue that comes in. And so is that differentiate that toggle that's the most important piece of it, because there are certain groups who do something similar to this, like a Nodal, who will send almost all of the reward to the people that actually do it and leave very little left for the overall token ecosystem. And I think that ends up having a very different kind of effect on the token ultimately.
Yeah, I agree.
That is interesting. So then help understand, how big can this be? Like, how are you obviously density matters, right? So if you have 8 million devices, that's great, but you got to be dense in places that want the data, and then that data, and then in places that's valuable. So help people understand the scale potential. Like, you mentioned 10 million revenue, I think, in 2023. Is that right?
Yeah.
So if what would make you happy in, say, 2027? What revenue would you like would make Markus thrilled? Like, give us kind of where, or another year, pick it. I'm just trying to get a sense of scale as to what you think is achievable.
What makes me happy? 500 million. But
Okay. That would make a lot of people happy.
but I think we have like cracked a really amazing formula in ways like having all the components. We know how to scale it. We know how long people stay around in our ecosystem and how to get demand and everything. So I think we just, it's on the precipice of could be very, 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 very large. And we are, that's 500 million might be a stretch, in 2027, but there are obviously it's possible.
Listen, that would that'd be great. If you were able to get, 10% of that number, 50 million, that would seem pretty substantial as well. Given the market cap's 150 million right now, if you have 50 million and you only buy and burn half of that, that's still a very big result, right?
Maybe.
Interesting. Well, and you're not really worried. It sounds like you're not really worried about centralized competitors because you're offering something different. So I would classify your service as something almost like a unique service that the centralized companies can't really offer, or they offer it. It is almost automated in a way that is not reliable. Is that fair?
Yeah. And it's they would need to start like a new service, like there's a Uber or a DoorDash, in a way. Our community are gig people, right? As anyone in DePIN is, right? It's like a gig economy kind of people. It's like a new gig service in a way, and in a Web2 way, I think. Yeah, and we haven't seen a Web2 gig economy, of that scale and that breadth.
And how I think I saw you're operational in 150 countries. Is that right?
Yeah, they are around the globe. Basically.
But revenue is probably concentrated in whatever you're in the U.S. So I'm guessing it's U.S. and Europe.
Yeah, U.S., Asia, Europe, in that order.
Gotcha. Well, it's got to be a challenge because you're growing revenue, growing customers in BD all around the world at once, which has got to be a challenge also.
Yep. Yes, it is.
I can imagine that. Help us understand also, since you've been in DePIN for so long, what other DePIN projects do you like? Who else do you think is solving something interesting or has a compelling differentiated offering? Help people kind of, what are the projects you pay attention to?
Yeah. Weather data, for example, I love all the weather data stuff. I think, there's a lot of underserved communities in the world as well. And, you're in Amsterdam and I'm in San Diego. So, we are definitely served very well, I think, with sensors around us, but there's a lot of places in the world which are not. And I think weather data or other DePIN data which serves underserved communities is great, and which enables them to be better in agriculture, for example, or for AI. AI is biased because a lot of data doesn't get generated or it doesn't have enough value. And so I'm excited about data which gets collected in an African village, for example, and so yeah, weather is great. Mobile stuff is great, and anything that disintermediates the big guys like, Amazon, Google, so what you guys do, like compute and storage as well, I think is exciting. And, but someone told me half a year ago that they saw a list of like 2,000 DePINs and like an XR. And, if that was an official list, there must be 10,000, So I'm excited for the future that when regulation changes, and I think because of the new administration in the US, crypto regulation and RWA, real world asset regulation, I think is going to be more friendly. And because of that, the Trump administration puts so much pressure on other countries and regions to have their worldview. I think, they're going to do the same thing for crypto. I think right now the IMF, for example, was pretty anti-crypto, right? And so if those could be also like positive for our industries, I think there's another stretch could be that, where real world assets are going, in the future, data centers could just be decentralized DePINs, and and big infrastructure projects, like a solar farm outside in the desert, for example, where I am. It's stuff like that could all be DePIN run, and that's my dream future. Is that basically more and more of the world becomes DePINized, and we're just in the infancy of that, right? We're just in a proof of concept stage in a way right now. I think in computed storage is different, but in the rest of DePIN, I think we're in a proof of concept kind of stage, and as we can grow that with favorable regulation, I'm excited about a lot of things.
Yeah, listen, I agree, and I think the high profile early projects, so like a Filecoin, or the compute or storage side that you mentioned, I think those are enormous opportunities. But I learn about new DePIN projects all the time, and I don't know if you're familiar, for example, with Huddle 01, which is basically a competitor to Google Meet or Zoom. And it's, half or whatever, a third the price. And it works by using excess compute and bandwidth, which is terrific. So I think it's DePIN, to your point, can kind of infiltrate lots of parts of our daily lives over the next kind of 5+ years.
I do.
Well, super interesting. How do people download XYO? How do they get involved? How do they start to participate in your network and your ecosystem?
Yeah, go to XYO.network and sign up for our newsletter, find the Twitter follow link and all the things. Once you're there, we capture you. And or go directly to coinapp.co. That's where you can download the coin app to start participating and collect some data. And
is there anywhere you need data most? Where do you kind of find yourself needing, participants most?
Everywhere. There's no limit. That's why
everywhere. Okay, there's no limit. Awesome. Great. Well, get involved and be a power user. Excellent. Listen, thanks for joining, Markus. Really appreciate it. Super interesting.
This was great. Thank you so much.
The DePIN Podcast, the place where we explore real-world use cases unlocked by crypto. That's all for today. Thanks for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us grow. Add a like, add a comment. And of course, if you have anyone you think we should be talking to or have on this podcast, either leave a comment there or reach out. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.